Yep.
Welcome to The Point with Mick Rich. I'm joined here with Gregg Hall, who is the current mayor of Rio Rancho and candidate for New Mexico governor. Gregg, great having you on board.
Thank you, Mick. We certainly appreciate you inviting us on, and I'm looking forward to talking with you so we can get out there and make sure everybody understands what we're going to do as the next governor of the state of New Mexico.
So before we get to this, I looked at your website. I know a little bit about you. Uh, you've been mayor for 12 years of Rio Rancho. That's number one. But what did you do before you were mayor?
So immediately before I was mayor, I owned a packing and shipping company. It was called Certified Packing and Crating, and it's actually still in existence to today. In 2012, our youngest son graduated college, and we were thinking about like stepping back and maybe doing something different in life. So my wife and I decided we would sell the company. She worked for Intel Corporation at that time, and we said, well, let's step back and and just take a deep breath and see what's next. Now that our youngest is out, we're empty nesters at this point, right?
Right.
And and that was a new world for us after raising 5 kids, and sold the company just so we had that breathing room. And after we sold the company, we were kind of deciding what was the next thing we wanted to do. And in the interim, I decided to do small business consulting, helping some small business entrepreneurs get their businesses set up, get their business licenses, and so on and so forth. And I was helping set up a company up in Rio Rancho, and it was just uh, incredibly difficult just to get a home occupation business license in Rio Rancho, and that should be the easiest one to get. Is as long as you comply with all the different little rules and you're not
Oh,
running a manufacturing facility out of your house, you should be able to get a home occupation business license pretty easy. And of course, as it goes, Mick, you know this is when you complain about government, somebody says, "Why don't you do something about it?" And it, that's where it was first proposed that maybe I should run for office.
okay. So if I remember right, 12 years ago, Rio Rancho was I won't say the butt of the jokes, but Rio Rancho was the also ran city of
Yes,
the Albuquerque Metro. And you guys were just really considered not, there's Albuquerque and then there's Rio Rancho. And
right.
and then we're looking at it where Rio Rancho is today, and it's phenomenal
It really
where
is. And
the city has gone.
well, in a recent debate, it was said, well, Rio Rancho is an affluent community. Well, it wasn't an affluent community when I took office
Oh,
in 2012.
you know what? And so I decided, I looked at your website, and I'm going to be honest with you, Gregg. If I was going to vote on who I'm going to vote for, and I looked at your website, that doesn't put a great foot forward for you, because when I did just a couple searches, I looked at U.S. News, and they're talking about the cost of living, and you guys are in the national home value is 360,000, and Rio
Right,
Rancho is 311,000. So you guys are affordable. Then you
right.
get into income, and you guys are really pretty darn good when it comes to the average income. When
Yes.
I looked at that, and so I'm looking at that, the job market, the median household income in Rio Rancho is about 88,400, with the national median income of really 83. So your home values are lower than the national. Your income is higher than the national. And then one of the things that I noticed about Rio Rancho, and as a builder, these are the things that I look at. This is I'm going, you guys have you have affordable housing. This is where the builders are going to build
Right.
because your regulations are great for affordable housing.
Correct.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is why new families are moving to Rio Rancho, young families.
Yeah, and Mick, to the point on the to the issue of the website, what we wanted to do is we wanted to focus more on a gubernatorial run than the city of Rio Rancho, and so we don't have a lot of that data up there. Maybe we should, but the fact of the matter is that Rio Rancho has been nationally recognized. When I took office in 2014, the median household income was roughly around 52,000 is what the median income was then, and we've turned that community around. That community was just had foreclosures all over the place. Businesses were flocking out. There was all the home builders had pretty much left the city and had abandoned a lot of existing developments, and it took a lot of work to turn the engine back on and get it rolling again. Intel Corporation, for example, had one foot out the door. They were leaving. You might as well they might as well have already left the state because they went from 8,500 employees, I think, in their heyday. That's a rough estimate. I might be off on that number, down to about 900 jobs when I took office in 2014. So getting everything to turn around on that
All
was
right.
a lot of work.
Since you brought up Intel, people, if you're tuning in and you're listening to this, you're saying, Gregg, you had Intel over there. That's kind of like Southeast New Mexico talking about, oh, gas revenues are, oil revenues are up and it's all good. And you say, well, that's just the oil and gas. But one of the things for people to realize was that, and I talked with somebody that sat on the board at Intel. This was probably 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Intel was blowing and going.
Yep.
Intel needed additional water rights. And you had people down in Corrales saying, and people in Albuquerque saying, we don't want to give uh, Intel any more water. And then they were protesting uh, the emissions regulations rules. Not that, right, Intel's not like, stacks of burning whatever, but it's a clean industry. And it made it to I don't know if you knew this, but it made it to the boardroom. Is that the only place in the world protested Intel was Rio Rancho, and it had to do with Bill Richardson and that gang. And all of a sudden they looked at Intel Rio Rancho as a liability, not as an asset. And you're right. And it looked like they're going out the door. And Gregg, you turned that around. And I bring this up is if you're tuning in, Albuquerque is spending billions of dollars to try to entice companies to come to Albuquerque. And you're not doing that in Rio Rancho. You have companies, of course, there are a few that you've given incentives to, but
Yep.
Intel is a prime example of how you turned it around for Rio Rancho. And the question I have is, and if people are tuning in, Gregg, how is how did you do that? And what are you going to do as governor to turn it around so we once again have affordable housing, once again have good paying jobs? And when we talk about people say, are you pro business? But you've got the prime evidence of showing people that it's not about pro business, it's about good paying jobs that support families.
That is true, and I will tell you, we did have a lot of partners on getting Intel to stay. The state was a partner, the county was a partner, the city was a partner, and we even had federal government assistance as well. So it was a big one, but we all had to rally together to really, reaffirm our commitment to Intel as a corporation and as a business in New Mexico, because as you mentioned, they weren't feeling very welcomed here, and when you saw the results of what happened when you had these companies when you had these people protesting Intel Corporation and saying we don't want you here, that really slowed down the ecosystem build out that you would normally see around a manufacturing facility like Intel Corporation. For example, if you go up to Portland and you look at their facilities up there, all of their support manufacturers are around them. All of their support companies are around those factories. If you go to Ocotillo in Arizona, it's just all kinds of support factories and support companies around them that support the mission of Intel. And we never got that here in New Mexico. And I think we missed the boat when we get a big company that is really looking to make a difference in a state, in a community, and we push back on it. And we see this time and time again. What we have to do is understand how we can invite these industries into our communities, into our state, work with them to understand our environmental needs, such as water, work with them on that, because Intel has been a really great steward of the water. They really have. And
Right.
so we can work with these companies to make sure that they're a good fit for our state and make sure that they're being good stewards of the resources that we have, so that there's a great partnership there. Those are the things that companies are looking for. They're not looking for the it's not necessarily all about the tax breaks. What they want to do is they want to feel welcome. And if you're not going to make them feel welcome, then they're going to go find some place that does make them feel welcome. The tax incentives and some of the other incentives are probably some of the lower end things that they really look at, Mick, when they're coming in. They're looking at workforce development. Do we have a workforce? They're looking at the education system. Do we have a good education system where we can work with that education system to create a pipeline of employees that will eventually work in our facilities, right? Can and is it a good education that if we move people into the state, our kids are gonna get a good education? And are we living in a state where when we go home at night we feel safe? And so
Yeah.
all of these things play a factor in companies coming into particular areas. And so it's not just about the tax incentives, it's about the total ecosystem that surrounds these companies where they want to come in.
I agree. So, Greg, we need to bring this segment to a close. We're going to circle back around and we're going to be talking about crime and homelessness. So, tune back in. Thank you. Let's give it a few minutes.
Another thing, Mick, your microphone seems to be coming in and out. I don't know if that's my phone or your microphone.
Okay.